Sometimes people ask, what about my narcissist? Will my narcissist change? What about all the things you've been saying and showing about how you're changing and being different? Is that going to happen with them? Are they going to actually get to the place where they're self-aware? How do I do that? A lot of times people ask me a lot of different questions about this in talking about narcissism and trying to figure out if they can help their person become aware, or are they actually changing? And I think those subjects need to be addressed a lot of times because a lot of times people don't have a clue of what's actually going on in their relationship or in the mind of the narcissist when they're actually thinking or suggesting or even saying that they are changing. How does that look to you? If you guys don't know who I am, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist that's on this channel and TikTok, Instagram, Facebook to provide awareness about what narcissism is, the havoc that it wreaks in people's lives, the marriages, the friendships, the relationships that it destroys, and how it impacts people on a day-to-day basis through the trauma and through the things that they get put through. Also, not just to bring awareness, but growth, healing, and change. That's why I'm on these platforms, to try to interact with people, try to talk to people about what's going on, to be able to help them break free from the trauma bond, to be able to get a place where they get unaddicted, where they detox from that narcissist, and where they get to a place where they can find healing and growth. I'm not on this platform to give hope. I'm not on this platform to keep you in an abusive relationship. I'm not going to say you should just love your spouse better. You should just do something a certain way better. You should just change something. Or that you should stick in a relationship because of your religion or because of your family or because of your friends or because of expectations. But I'm on here to tell people what it actually is, how it affects, how it destroys. But then ultimately, it becomes a point in time when it turns from being about the narcissist to where it turns to being about you. How are you going to grow? How are you going to heal? How are you going to change on a day-to-day basis? And how are you going to fight for that change versus being a slave to someone else? Something to think about. Anyways, a lot of times people ask, will narcissists change? Like, are they going to change? And you have to think and you have to understand about narcissism, like what's actually going on under the surface. So a lot of times I've described it as narcissism is here, and underneath is this raging river of shame that's underneath. And shame is the reason why narcissist is unwilling to be vulnerable or unwilling to be honest. You hear a lot of people say that narcissists are incapable of change or it's impossible for them to change. The really caveat to that is it's impossible for them to change if they don't admit who they are. The problem is the narcissist doesn't want to admit who they are. They don't want to admit the shit that's inside. They don't want to admit the unworthiness that they feel day in, day out, that they're unwilling to show other people because of that shame, because of that unwillingness to be exposed, to be vulnerable. You see, for a narcissist to touch base on guilt and vulnerability, that feels awful for them to be able to touch. That feels awful and scary. Think of it this way. Now, a narcissist actually getting vulnerable and revealing what's inside, or the shame that's deep down buried underneath everything else that's going on. That idea of vulnerability feels very, very painful and feels very impossible to even get past. I think I've made this illustration before, but like think of it as if you're boiling a pot of water and you accidentally stick your hand inside. You're going to jerk your hand back as quick as possible. Well, that's how the narcissist feels whenever they get close to that guilt and that aspect of shame, because that's infringing on vulnerability of like, wait a second, if I actually feel this, whoa, I can't feel that. And they jerk back so fast. And so when it comes down to it, will they ever change? They won't change unless there's that option of them being honest and vulnerable and continuing that pattern of growth, continuing that pattern of change. Well, you might say like, well, I think they're being honest, but I'm not sure. Well, you need to make sure that they're being honest. And that might be difficult in some different ways. But honestly, a lot of times people struggle with the idea of vulnerability. People say, well, they're being honest and I think they're being vulnerable, but like, what does that vulnerability actually look like? A lot of times with narcissists, you'll have fake vulnerability that'll stem from past things. Fake vulnerability pops up when they tell you of past traumas, if they tell you of past childhood things, if they tell you past things that they've had to go through that shows you like, oh, I need to help this person, I need to support this person. But then you realize, wait a second, that's not actually vulnerability. Me telling you about my trauma when I was 5 years old is actually a form of vulnerability, but it's actually fake. It's trying to get you to think like, oh, like there's actually vulnerability, there's emotion, there's empathy, there's sympathy, there's something there that I can work with. But in the moment, I don't tell you anything at all. Not that I'm being flat out lying about everything, but I'm not being vulnerable. Of, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. This is actually what's going on inside me. Narcissist doesn't want to do that. They don't want to be vulnerable in that aspect. They don't want to be honest. They don't want to have accountability. They don't want to take responsibility, because all that hits down below on shame. And that's why narcissists typically will never change. There's very few people on any platform out there that are self-aware narcissists that are here saying, hey, we're working on trying to grow ourselves. Because the majority of people out there, one, don't identify as narcissists, and two, if they do, they don't care. And they don't care to be self-aware. They don't care to work on themselves. Sometimes you'll see the change that starts to happen right at the very end. Or you'll hear in the arguments where the arguments go to another level and they're just saying, like, can't you see I'm trying? Like, I'm trying to work on this change. Like, why can't you see that? The thing is, they're normally trying to project that there's some kind of change there when there actually is none. Oftentimes it'll be the thought of like, hey, I'm changing for you. I'm trying. I know early on my platform, people would say, but are you actually changing? And I would be like, I'm trying. And they would take that and be like, okay, well, that's not good enough. You need to be changing. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I can't just say I'm trying. I have to show the actual fruit of me changing. I have to show quantifiable evidence of saying, hey, this is how I was. This is how I am. This is where I'm going. A narcissist doesn't like to do that. They like to sit here and say, I'm still trying. Can't you see I'm still trying? And you're like, but nothing's changed. But nothing's happened. Like, you haven't gotten any farther than where you were 6 months ago. But I'm trying. At that point, you have to evaluate the actions and the behavior. Because otherwise, you'll keep getting future faked time and time again of the narcissist saying that they're trying. But in reality, are they really? Because nothing's actually changing. And that's the difference, is someone who wants to try, someone who wants to change will go to any lengths to be able to do so, and will go to any state of vulnerability and honesty to get that and to work on that. Narcissists won't. So while they're trying, you'll notice they're staying in the same spot that they've always been in. They might paint it up or change it or make it look a little bit better than what it first was, but it's still the same. Are they being honest? Are they being vulnerable? Are they working on that consistent change? Now, at the very end of the relationship, all of a sudden you start to see stuff changing right and left. You're like, whoa, like, this is crazy. Like, they're giving me everything I wanted for this entire relationship. The past 5 years, all of a sudden they're like fulfilling every single thing that I've been asking for the past 5 years. Thing you have to understand, if they're fulfilling everything that you wanted in the last 5, 10, 15 years, however long you've been with that narcissist, if they're fulfilling everything you wanted at the very end, you need to wrap your mind around the fact that that means that they knew every single thing that you wanted for that length of time, and they were unwilling to give it to you. They made the conscious choice, the conscious effort, all those times when you asked for love, for affection, for honesty, for faithfulness, and they chose every single time not to give that. And at the very end of the relationship, as you get ready to walk out the door, everything is switched, everything has changed, and magically, they're all better. It's a lie. It's a facade. And the reason why they do that at the very end is so, one, they don't feel bad about themselves. Two, so you walk away from a good person. And then three, so they can tell their people, hey, they left me. It wasn't me. She walked out the door. It wasn't me. He left me. That's what a narcissist will do. But you have to understand, at the very end of the relationship, when everything starts to change, like the last second, all it is manipulation. It's them saying, hey, I know and I acknowledge everything that they've wanted over the past 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and I haven't given it to them. Now they're getting ready to leave. All of my normal manipulative tactics do not work. So let me pull this out and say, hey, I'll give you what you want to extend my stay in your life a little bit longer. And that's what the narcissist will do. Sometimes you'll have the narcissist that's like, okay, yeah, I want to get change. And they'll go to therapy. They'll get into groups. They'll go through programs. They'll talk to coaches and counselors and all types of things to check the boxes. And it plays with your mind with the cognitive dissonance of like, wait a second, they're saying they're going to therapy, but they're still yelling at me. They say they're going and getting help, but they're still abusing me. They say that they're doing this, but there's still not honesty there. And that's when you have to acknowledge and go based off of the facts of the situation. Nothing more. The only thing that matters in a narcissistic relationship is the facts of the situation. How are they demonstrating? How are they acting? How are they behaving? How are they responding? How are they opening up emotionally? How are they working on themselves? And how do you see that progression on a day-to-day basis? If you have a narcissist in your life and you don't see honest vulnerability, honest current vulnerability, and consistent change, and them consistently putting in that work day after day after day, you're not with someone who's changing. You're probably not with someone who wants to change. Because for those of you that have a narcissist that go to counseling or go to therapy, all they're doing is going to check off the boxes, and you'll see that thrown back in your face later. You should be more grateful because I'm better. You should be grateful because I'm doing everything that you asked. You should be grateful because of this. And they'll flip it all around while they still continue to abuse you. It might take a different flavor. It might look slightly different, but they'll still continue to abuse you and say, you should be happy because I've checked all the boxes. I was talking to someone the other day. It is almost like the idea of, like, let's use the example of like Alcoholics Anonymous, okay, where they get like a coin, okay? Imagine a narcissist gets like a 1-day coin for the one day that they were nicer to you, the one day that they were better. What happens with the narcissist is they spread those out over a period of time, and they keep collecting all these coins, and then they come to you and be like, hey, look, I've got 1,000 1-day coins. You should be proud of me. The problem is you won't see a number 2-day coin, or 3, or 4, or 1,000. Because all the change that they have is typically manipulative. And it's meant to keep you hooked a little bit longer. It's meant to extend their stay in your life. It's meant to roll over your boundaries so that you don't leave. That's all they want. It's very manipulative. Please be careful.